hope this is working. Hey guys, I'm TKO, aka the Crystal Onyx, aka Memcho. You might have seen me around on Lax's channel for the SPL or SCL podcasts, with the boys, 3D, Emilio, Blunder, Fade, all of them. Or you might have seen me around on Smogon, or more likely than not, you have no idea who I am. So I'm starting this YouTube thing mainly because I want to stop saying the words and bro. Yeah, those are the two ones. I say those words a lot in real life, and I realize I just need to get better at articulating my thoughts. So here I am on YouTube. What better way than to cover some of my old replays that are still, kind of in my mind from SCL 4. So this is my SCL 4 Week 1 replay versus Colin. I'm probably not going to commentate all of my SCL games, just ones that I think, have a good game behind it, or some of my chokes. I also need to go over those. And, maybe I'll go over some other replays from SPL as well. Or maybe I'll just be uploading Fortnite. One of those is very possible. So I guess I can give a bit of backstory about this replay. I can play Colin 2, is Colin on Smogon, and I actually know Colin a bit. He helped me a lot in SCL 3, and he was also on an LCPL team that I was helping out prior to this tournament starting. I wasn't on the team, but I was just in their chat because I didn't join the tour. So I know a good amount of things going into this game. And the main thing that I noted about Colin is that he always liked to use standard safe builds. So what does that look like? Well, something that is on your screen right now, but also just Tink Toad Marini was one of the most common cores at the time, and also things like triple poison, Stunky, Glimmet, Marini, or Fungus, plus Mienfoo, Vullaby, and last like Voltorb or something like that. Those were the types of teams that I always saw him using. Those are the types of teams that he were passing to people in his LCPL chat as well as me last year, and I actually got some wins with those teams, and they're solid stuff, but that's just kind of what I'm expecting. And there isn't much information about me that Colin has to go off, because the last relevant LC replays that I have was from the SCL prior. I don't usually join LC tours in the middle of the year except for LC Open, and I lost to Helam in round 1 of that. So that was a bit unfortunate, but thankfully I did get my run back in SPL, so at least there's that. But there's not much that Colin has to go off of me, and I'm kind of going off this assumption that he's going to be bringing something standard. And what does standard look like? Standard looks like Tink Toad Marini. It looks like triple poison. It looks like Stunky, regular balance, or it looks like, something along those lines. And that's why I decided that TRAPINCH was not a bad idea. So this team that I'm using is actually a team that my boy Laroxel made and used in LCPL, and the Vullaby set wasn't revealed. The Vullaby is Iron Defense plus Nasty Plot Vullaby, and the TRAPINCH obviously helps Vullaby with that because it's able to trap both Glimmet and Tinkatink. And I also thought that TRAPINCH was not a bad bring into Colin, because I was expecting, something like Tink Toad Marini coming from him. And, you Earthquake the Tinkatink, you can Earthquake the Marini. If you're slower, you can Terra and, Revenge Kill it that way and force it to Terra. And obviously you have First Impression Terra Bug for Toad Scroll if you want to prevent a spin or something like that, or force that to Terra as well. So TRAPINCH was a pretty good anti-meta pick for that reason. This team is pretty cheesy. Obviously, you would want to use a better ground type, a more real ground type, although my opponent doesn't have a ground type, but I'll get into that in a second. But when you're using something like TRAPINCH, you're giving up a lot of defensive utility, whereas something like Mudbray has way more defensive utility for being a ground type. It can get up Stealth Rock, it can pivot in on things like Vullaby or Mienfoo, it threatens Fungus much easier with Earthquakes and Terra Steel, Heavy Slam, stuff like that. It's just much better of a ground type Pokemon, whereas TRAPINCH is, used for the sole purpose of trapping. But in this game, TRAPINCH looks amazing, right? It can First Impression this, it can Earthquake the Tinkatink, it can First Impression the Voltorb or force it to Terra, it can force the Marini to Terra, and, well, it doesn't really do much to Vullaby, but that's, that's a lot of Pokemon that TRAPINCH has a lot of direct power over. So that's the first thing I'm thinking on this team preview. But before I get into team preview, let me also explain a bit of backstory of what this metagame is at the moment. So Voltorb is not banned yet in SCL for the first 2 weeks, and Voltorb is definitely a very overbearing Pokemon. I thought it was over centralizing. I don't know if that necessarily means it was like a traditional type of broken, and now that it's gone, I definitely do miss some of the things that it offered in the metagame. It was able to kind of keep the 19 speed Pokemon at check, like Magby and Diglett or Lola, so those things became very popular, as well as Wingull once this thing was banned. And that's a very useful thing to have, because it felt like at least there was less variance. It was just that the teams were very samey, but at least you were able to get rid of a lot of variance, or dealing with things like Wingull. All that kind of stuff is very annoying, so I do miss that element. But at the same time, it's just so good. It's 20 speed, which is the fastest unboosted speed tier in LC. It has fast volt switches. It's an electric type that's able to eat Earthquake, which is absurd, right? You can have it check Mudbray or Diglett once, which is just a very good trait to have. It can static para. There's a lot of good things about Voltorb, and it has very good Terra types as well. So I guess kind of looking at the team matchup now, team preview, what do I think he's going to lead? He has two pretty solid lead options of Mienfoo and Voltorb. I'm thinking more likely Mienfoo is going to be leading. So what Mienfoo is good for is leading into my own Voltorb, because the Voltorb lead interaction is not that great. If you win the speed tie and you click Volt Switch first, or maybe you both are clicking Terra Blast in the beginning and doing like 28% to each other, it's just a really awkward interaction. But if he leads Mienfoo, he can pretty safely U-turn and get a lot of valuable chip on my Voltorb, or more likely I'm gonna have to Volt out of there, because I don't want to get that chip on my Voltorb just yet, because it is pretty good in this matchup. Obviously super effective on Mareanie and Vullaby, and also Tink can't really do too much damage to it if it doesn't have Ice Hammer, things like that. Goth also can't kill it with one Psychic, so there's a lot of good that my Voltorb can have. What my lead options are, though, is obviously I don't see any ground type on his team, so Voltorb is just a very appealing lead and Volt Switch. If we do engage in the lead Voltorb interaction, I have my own Mienfoo, I have my own Fungus, which Goth can't kill from full most of the time, especially on Fungus, but also Mienfoo, it's a 1/16th roll that it can't kill that. So, lead Voltorb for me is not that bad of an option, and I'm thinking more so that he's going to lead Mienfoo more than Voltorb, just because I think he doesn't want to engage in that Voltorb interaction. I think, it's very important in LC. I think that what differentiates a good player from maybe an average player is how they're able to handle the Dittos, the Mienfoo, Vullaby, or in this case, in this metagame, Voltorb interactions, because those are so common in the early game especially, and you're able to make or break your momentum with that. Maybe you come out knocking their Mienfoo's Eviolite off, and it's weakened a substantial amount, so that later in the game your Voltorb is doing way more with Thunderbolt or Volt Switch that it can't regen it off, things like that. Or maybe you are able to navigate the Vullaby interactions well, and then switch out while they try to Brave Bird your Vullaby, and now you have an advantageous position on that. So yeah, there's just a lot of nuances when it comes to especially the early game in LC and how you're able to navigate those mirror matchups, because more often than not, Mienfoo or Vullaby are very good leads into the rest of the metagame, and those are the ones that get led, and you don't want to be put in a bad Pokemon, so you're going to lead your own Mienfoo as well. So that's kind of that side note over there. There's going to be probably a lot of side notes, because there's just a lot of little things that I want to explain, but I'm probably going to be missing a lot of things as well. So let's see. I'm going to lead my own Voltorb, and he's going to indeed lead off with Mienfoo now. Turn 1, you're going to see he clicks Fake Out, and just right off the bat, I don't think that's a good play, because he's risking a static para for no reason, and I don't really think the Fake Out chip was worth potentially having your Mienfoo be paralyzed for the rest of the game, which makes it even slower than something like TRAPINCH. and if it gets knocked later in the game, then it could die to earthquake. You know, just things like that. It's slower than Fungus. It's just not a great position to be in. But this fake out already is giving us some information that this Mienfoo does not have any attack EVs, which is nice to know because some Mienfoos run, attack so that they're +2 if they're running Swords Dance can kill opposing Mienfoos with high jump kick. So it's a very valuable information to know, and when you see that it's only doing 14%, then it's likely that this is going to be just the standard Mienfoo, and we're going to confirm that. I'll show you the calc in a second here, but my volt switch is 30%, so pulling up the calc here, and I have to put this set here, so Voltorb. So if this were the normal Mienfoo with 17 speed and only 36 SpDef for 12 SpDef points, my volt switch would not be doing 33%. It would still be doing the same, but you can see here it's doing 7 HP, but it's doing that on 23 HP instead, which is why the percentage is 30.4%. So it's very valuable information that I'm already getting off the beginning of this replay, and it's that this Mienfoo is more likely than not going to be 13 and 23 HP. It has to be because of the HP percentage on the volt switch. This is kind of a nuance, nuance of LC, this percentage being much more precise than it would be at a level 100, where it has like the damage rolls are much, I guess, less telling of what the spread could be, but here there's no ambiguity. I know it has to be at least 23 HP, so this is more likely than not going to be his EV spread. And also confirmed with the no attack fake out did 14% obviously on my Voltorb spread, so that's just another confirmation. So I Volt Switch. I'm not going to go into Fungus just yet because having that potentially get knocked off is not great. It lives a Gothita Psychic from full with its Eviolite, and a better switch for me is just to go to Mienfoo. And if he clicks U-turn, that's also not bad because you're going to notice that U-turn does not even put me, it doesn't change the rule for Gothita Psychic. That's very important to know. I am also, since I know that he is 13 speed, I know that my Mienfoo, my Vullaby outspeeds him because my Mienfoo is 17 speed, my Vullaby is 14 speed, my Glimmet outspeeds him. So it's just very good information to have, and it's why you got to pay attention to these damage rolls in LC especially. And so the Psychic roll on Mienfoo is not enough to kill me. I can, pull it up for you guys. Even on the fast pivot set, Psychic is a 1/16th roll for him to kill, and that's just not something you want to go in. Even with the chip damage, the HP numbers, U-turn did not do 4 HP, so he can't go to Vullaby or Gothita just yet unless he wants to risk the 1/16 roll, or if he wants to go for Terra Psychic and kill the Mienfoo, which is not a great option, and I'll explain that in a bit because there's some interactions that are going to pop up like that. But he goes to Vullaby, which is a very safe switch from him. He has a pretty good knockoff, and you're actually going to realize here that this Vullaby set was a bit awkward to use, especially in the early game, because I'm not able to switch in my own Vullaby on his Vullaby, as an option. It's not the best or greatest option. It is an option over going to Glimmet, because if it's something that you want to chase, like going for the Brave Bird speed tie potentially, something like that, it's just the option. It's very nice to have Vullaby with knockoff and Brave Bird as an option to send in on opposing knockoffs, because you're also able to make predictions potentially with U-turn or something like that. If I'm predicting he wants to keep his Vullaby's Eviolite and go to Tinkatink, I would be able to U-turn, but this Vullaby is not that, and it's kind of awkward because in the beginning of the game you have to play very carefully around Vullaby, so I pretty much have to go to my Glimmet. It's telegraphed play. There isn't really much I can do. I can't even U-turn for chip because it would be giving it weak armor, and that's not something you want to do, especially when these could potentially be a speed tie if he's not adamant. So he gets his knockoff chip. It's going to be a 3-8 KO on Glimmet. It's just what it is, and it's actually important to note around this time, and especially from Colin's LCPL team, they were running a Vullaby set that was knockoff plus throat chop. And if I pull up the calc here for Vullaby physical attacker against Glimmet, that knockoff did 43, which is the average roll. And then throat chop is actually, without the Eviolite, going to do 13 potentially HP already from the 10 that he did with knockoff, and this is against the Jolly, right? Adamant actually doesn't change the rules at all, but the knockoff Okay, that does not change the rules at all. But you can see that Throat Chop into knockoff into Throat Chop will actually kill the Glimmet. So I just have to kind of hope he's not Throat Chop, because when you are running Throat Chop, you are dropping, you know, good utility moves like Defog, or you're dropping U-Turn potentially, Roost, or Terra Blast Ground even. Like you can't run all however many of those moves on Vullaby. Usually they run Brave Bird knockoff as a given, then, you know, Roost, Defog, or like Roost U-Turn, or Defog U-Turn, something like that, or Terra Blast Ground even, which is you know, a very strong set in of its own right, and more common than Throat Chop. So I just kind of have to accept that if he is Throat Chop, then, you know, it is what it is, and I have to hope that maybe I get the speed tie and get my rocks up, because I am just going to be clicking rocks here. He doesn't have a rapid spinner, and if he is Defog on Vullaby, then, you know, he's probably not going to click Defog this turn. It would be kind of crazy if he did click Defog on this turn, got rid of my T-Spikes, and then at least he'd only have rocks up as I rocked again. But, you know, he might not even be Defog on this, is the point I'm trying to say. So, like, rocks are just very good in this matchup. It's good for chipping his Voltorb and his Gothita, things like that. So I'm just going to be clicking my rocks, and he's actually not going to stay in because he doesn't want to risk the Power Gem. He's going to go to Marini. That's the other thing that I really like about Glimmet, is that it's able to telegraph some plays. Because the Toxic Spike was up, you know, he could have switched into Mienfoo, or, you know, maybe Voltorb or Goth or something like that, but then they would be eating the T-Spike. So more likely than not, he was going to be going to Marini, and, you know, it's a very safe play to make, so it's the play that he makes as well. It's not a bad play. And I'm just going to go into my Mienfoo now. I don't want to go into my Fungus just yet because, you know, obviously Mienfoo can sponge the hit and regen it off. As long as he doesn't get a poison, it's not really a big deal. Plus, I was predicting Surf, and it's just a fine play to make because it threatens knockoff on his Marini. But, you know, there's a bit of nuance with that, because he could go to his Tinkatink and pickpocket my Violet once I click knockoff. So that is something that I have to consider. But either way, Mienfoo is a very safe pivot, and I can, you know, if I don't feel safe on this Marini after taking one hit, I can, you know, U-turn into Fungus or something like that and see, you know, it's just a very safe play to make. He's actually going to double to Goth. Now, that's a pretty good play because he was predicting my Fungus. But, you know, as I mentioned, I wanted to mid-ground to Mienfoo because I felt like it was safe into a potential Surf. And the other thing that it does is actually not allow my Fungus to be trapped by a potential double to Goth, because while Fungus does live Psychic, you have to click either Sludge or Spore with Fungus. And obviously, you don't want to Spore on a trick because then you're kind of in a tough position, but you also don't want to, so then you kind of force the Sludge Bomb, and, you know, losing my Fungus early this game is kind of bad because it's good for either forcing his Voltorb to click Terra or keeping it as a check to Voltorb. It's very good for that. It's also very threatening with Spore because his only switch in is weak to Sludge Bomb, obviously, so something would have to take a Spore. So I just didn't want to go to my Fungus on that Marini turn, and obviously going to Mienfoo on Surf or Sludge Bomb isn't exactly the underworld, even if he does get a Sludge Bomb poison. So that's why I went to Mienfoo. He goes to Goth, and as I brought up the calc earlier, Psychic is only a 1 in 16 roll to kill, assuming fast Mienfoo, which, you know, he doesn't know my spread or anything like that, so, you know, that's his best case scenario that he has to go off right now. And he could Terra Blast his Psychic and kill my Mienfoo, but that's not exactly a great trade for him either because, you know, first of all, he has to either Terra Stellar or Terra Psychic to kill me with Mienfoo. No other Terra type's going to be able to save him. And if he does that, then I'm going to be able to kill it with TRAPINCH First Impression after, and he just lost his Terra for, you know, low reward essentially. Then the rest of his team is pretty much walled by Fungus once this Goth gets reverse trapped. So it's not going to be an option that he pursues, and, you know, it's a pretty free U-turn for me. You know, even if I do get killed there, it's not really the end of the world. So the reason I didn't click knockoff there is because he could have gotten a Tinkatink obviously and stole my Violet, not something I want to pursue. And I'm just going to go to Voltorb on the Marini because it's a free Volt Switch. He doesn't have an immunity, and, you know, I can pivot back into Fungus or Mienfoo, and he doesn't really have a way to punish that, right? So I'm just going to click Volt Switch again, get my 30 chip on this Mienfoo along with the 1 HP Stealth Rock, which is very good. But I actually get a high roll on that Volt Switch. I believe that's a high roll. Let me pull this up. Yeah, the 1 in 16, 9 HP roll. So he's already lost 10 HP, which is very good chip. And I can go to my own Mienfoo now. Obviously, I can't go to my own Vullaby to click the Brave Bird that I don't have or threaten U-turn on his Tinkatink, so that's kind of unfortunate. I can't go to Mienfoo because, you know, high jump kick will 2-hit KO his Mienfoo at this range. I don't want to click knock into high jump kick, obviously, because he does have Tinkatink, but also high jump kick is not a bad click anyway. What are his plays? His plays are to either stay in and try to knock off or get some high jump kick chip, or, you know, fake out, obviously. Fake out into all of those. That's one of his plays, to stay in with Mienfoo. One of his plays is to just go to Marini or Vullaby, but both of those, you know, Marini can take a high jump kick pretty easily, sure, but it doesn't want to get knocked off potentially. Vullaby is going to be taking rocks plus high jump kick potentially, so that's probably not an option. Or he can go to Tinkatink on the knockoff. That, you know, these are a couple of his plays, and jump kick's just pretty safe into all of these. It's not gonna lose me anything unless I miss high jump kick, but otherwise, you know, if he stays in with Mienfoo, I'll get good chip on it. If he goes to Marini, you know, it is what it is. And if he goes to Tinkatink and I knock, that's just not a great play. So I'm just gonna click high jump kick, but he's gonna fake out first, and you know, this kind of sniffs out some information on the Mienfoo interactions as well. High jump kick doesn't kill, but that's okay. He doesn't click knockoff, and that's also fine. And he's just gonna go back to Marini, and once again, I'm just gonna click U-turn because, you know, I'm not pulling the trigger yet on clicking knock into potentially Tinkatink, and I want to get my regen up so that I can live Psychic. And I can just go into Fungus since I know he's not going to Goth that turn. He's gonna click Sludge Bomb. Now, you're gonna see here that he clicks Ice Beam, which would have actually left my Fungus pretty low, so this is more likely than not offensive Marini, since it's running Ice Beam. And Fungus, you can see, took 36 from that Sludge, so got the mid-roll, and then the Ice Beam. You know, Ice Beam, even with the max roll, 14 HP, 14 plus 9 would not be enough to kill my Fungus, but it would make it a lot weaker. It would force me to use Synthesis, which would also help him get a Goth potentially in on the Fungus, stuff like that. So it is good that I switched out into Mienfoo on that Ice Beam, keeping, you know, regen on Fungus at pretty high, and also Mienfoo is able to shrug off that Ice Beam as well, so that's fine with me. Here I pull trigger on the knockoff finally because, you know, I'm just kind of thinking he's gonna go for a Sludge Bomb fish, and, you know, I guess if he does go to Tinkatink, it would be kind of annoying, but I, you know, obviously have TRAPINCH, and high jump kick isn't even a bad click for me that turn, but, you know, I just kind of wanted to think that he was gonna Sludge Bomb again, and he actually clicks, I believe, Ice Beam again. Yeah, he's trying to catch my Fungus and try to 2-hit KO it, but now I can just U-turn, and I can actually U-turn into my Glimmet on this turn. Now I can explain why. Obviously he hasn't been clicking Surf, and clicking Surf as opposed to Sludge Bomb on a more safe switch into Fungus just seems pretty pointless from him. But even if I were to click Surf, even if he were to click Surf and kill my Glimmet, that's not really the end of the world. Glimmet's kind of served its purpose, and, you know, if that Vullaby is defog, it's going to be very difficult for them to defog, so I'm not too worried about sacking my Glimmet at this point. But I'm also predicting him to just click Sludge or Ice Beam, both of which, even without an Violet, Glimmet will live at 57%, and I can threaten a Mud Slap on anything that comes in. He's, you know, probably not going to switch in hard on his Vullaby on a Rock type, and Mud Slap is just pretty good because it, you know, he doesn't have a great switch into it. Mienfoo is already slower, Tinkatink will take a good amount, Goth would be slower after the Mud Slap, same with Voltorb, so it's a pretty good click for me. And he actually does click Ice Beam and I live it. And he goes to Tinkatink. Now, he goes to Tinkatink. I guess that was his play, and he's just going to be taking this as an opportunity to get up rocks. But you can see here, I'm actually able to get my TRAPINCH in now, and the Mud Slap into TRAPINCH core is going to be showing off pretty handy here because he's even slower than my Tinkatink, and my Earthquake is able to get the first kill of this game. Pretty cool tech there, I guess. And he's going to go out to his own Mienfoo. He is going to try to get some momentum and regen with the U-turn, I'm figuring, but I have a good Glimmet sack now to prevent him from U-turning out and getting some extra regen on that, so I'm just going to go to my Glimmet as a sack. It's done a lot this game, so, you know, now I can go out into my own Voltorb, and Giga Drain will kill the Mienfoo at this range, So it is a pretty good click. Volt will also kill, I'm pretty sure, the HP rounding, but it's not something that I need to click. And Giga Drain is a pretty good option into him too. It forces out his Voltorb pretty much. He can't really go out into any of these other Pokemon that won't kill me. And Marini obviously doesn't want to take a Giga Drain, so that's the other option. Just gonna click Giga Drain. I actually get a critical hit here. I don't think it ends up mattering too much now. Here is the first Voltorb speed tie of this game. So I'm thinking at this point, honestly, he probably should Terra and try to kill my Voltorb off the bat. I don't want to Terra my Voltorb here because I'm thinking my Fungus is a very good win con, as well as my Vullaby. It's still possible to win. But I think it's not a bad option for him to go for because he's kind of really in the back right now. He has rocks which are affecting his Pokemon, I feel like, more than me, and obviously, you know, his Gothita is going to be a non-factor once it gets trapped in my Trapinch. Also, it would have prevented him from being weak to First Impression. So I don't think it's a bad click from him. It really puts the pressure on me because I would have to probably Terra or just take a Giga Drain with my Trapinch and have that be really low. If he were Terra Fire, potentially, something like that. So I don't think it's a bad play because you're going to end up seeing that he Terras this later on in the game anyway because it's something that he has to do to force progress eventually. But he's not going to want to engage with that right now. He's just going to go for a Volt Switch, and he's going to go into his Mienfoo, which, you know, has been taking a lot of chip at this point. That high jump kick that I clicked on it earlier in the Foo interactions really coming into show here because even though it didn't die, it's at 57. It's going to be taking a Volt Switch. It's going to be at 27. It's just overall not a great position for him to be in, and I can go out to my own Mienfoo and threaten a high jump kick once again. It's just, yeah, he doesn't have a great switch into it at this point. His Marini is way too low, and it doesn't even have an Eviolite. He doesn't want to go to Gothita hard and potentially U-turn or knockoff or something like that. Although I guess going to Goth wouldn't be a bad option there because, you know, more likely than not I am going to be clicking high jump kick. So I guess he could have done that. But he's just going to go to Gothita here, kill me with Psychic. I'm not going to Terra my Mienfoo to try to live this because I don't think I need Terra Mienfoo to win this game. I'm thinking that, you know, Bug on Trapinch now to be defensively capable of living Surf or potentially a Voltorb Terra is very useful at this moment. And I'm just going to go to Trapinch and get my revenge kill on this with First Impression. He's not going to be able to get out of that, obviously. Now he's going to go into his Vullaby. So I have a couple plays here. I could go to Voltorb, and especially if I get Voltorb in on a static para and he clicks Knock or something like that, then that would be pretty great. I can also go to Vullaby, and I actually do end up going to Vullaby. Now the reason I go to Vullaby is because I think Vullaby is much less likely to win at this endgame, or, you know, than Voltorb I think is being useful because you need +4 with Vullaby to kill the Voltorb, and you have to roost a lot because T-Bolt's still going to be doing a decent amount of damage to my Vullaby, even if I Terra it to a neutral type. So I'm just thinking, and I can also get it in on this Vullaby's knock and start to Iron Defense up on it and set up that way and force this Vullaby to not be able to Terra. And him wasting a Terra on Vullaby would be much worse for him than saving his Voltorb's Terra. So I'm just going to go to Vullaby instead and start to lay the pressure on that way. Obviously I'm keeping Trapinch because it's very useful for First Impression and for Earthquake on Marini. So yeah, I just go to Vullaby, and I'm going to click Iron Defense this turn, and he's probably thinking like, oh shit, right? Like this is not a good position for him to be in at this point, because I am going to be able to get a nasty plot on this and live the Brave Bird. So it's just not a great position for him to be in. Personally, I would have probably Brave Birded this turn. Like, he should be thinking that I'm nasty plot, especially with this team composition and how I haven't been able to play it early in the game, switching it into things like Mienfoo or Vullaby. So, but I guess I don't think it makes too much of a difference, but I think just clicking Brave Bird there might have been a better option. But, we'll see. Maybe it could have given him an extra chance to crit, you know? But he clicks it here, and now I'm at neutral defense, and I'm at 22% now. I didn't want to click Roost here, and let me explain why. Show the calcs. I had no Eviolite. Brave Bird would have done 56 to 69% from Jolly, and from Adamant. From Adamant, that goes up a bit, so it goes up from 65 to 78%. And my calcs don't really tell me if he's Adamant or Jolly yet at this point of the game. You know, more likely than not he's Jolly, but even like I don't want to risk him being Adamant and getting a very favorable roll to kill me with Brave Bird just for me to roost and get some chip on that way. I don't think it makes much of a difference, so I'm just going to try to click Air Slash right here to get my chip off. Granted, as I hit, and I do hit, and you know, try to fish for a flinch. Obviously I'm shameless, but I don't get that flinch. He does get the Brave Bird. I think I stand by that play. I think it was the right play to make at that point, and I go to Voltorb, and at this point his Vullaby dies to rocks, so he can't really, you know, switch it out. Switch to Voltorb. He doesn't want to take chip with that either, so he's just gonna sack his Vullaby, and he's gonna go to this Voltorb and be forced to Terra finally. Now I just clicked T-Bolt. I didn't want to Terra my Voltorb if I did win this speed tie, and I'm thinking that he kind of has to Terra his Voltorb at this point to deal with Fungus anyway. So, you know, I'm just kind of hoping if it happens, it happens. If I lose a speed tie, I'm still not in a bad spot. My Fungus is pretty bulky, obviously, just because it's a Fungus, and it will be able to live even Terra Blast, Ice, or Fire from the Voltorb, which is the common set. So I was fine with that because then I could Spore and, you know, click Sludge Bomb and things like that. And if he were to switch out, then he would burn 0 turns of sleep and my Trapinch would win pretty much. So he is going to Terra Fire. He's going to outspeed me and kill me with Terra Blast Fire, which is fine because I can just go to my Fungus now and click Spore. If I were to get a 2-turn sleep, it'd be perfect because then I can just kill it with 2 Sludge Bombs or something along those lines. But I sent it once and he's going to get the first turn Wake, so that Spore didn't even make much of a difference. Because you're going to see it doesn't still kill, but I'm going to be low and I'm going to get the Sludge Bomb. I'm going to get the Sludge Bomb poison as well, but that doesn't make a difference, and you're going to see why in a sec. But, you know, first impression obviously from Trapinch is going to be able to kill this Voltorb at this low. And yeah, so Trapinch at this point has got, you know, 1, 2, 3 kills, and it's about to get its 4th because I'm just going to Terra Bug here and click Earthquake. It's actually a speed tie because he's running no investment on his Marini, and I'm running max on my Trapinch, so that's going to kill the Vullaby, or the Marini, sorry. And, you know, even if he won the speed tie, you know, his only out at that point was to get a static para on the first impression and then get 2 paras to kill me with 2 Surfs or, you know, Sludge Bomb or something like that if he was predicting the Terra Bug. So yeah, that was my week 1 game versus Colin. I hope this video was palatable or was worth a listen if you like listening to me yapping. So yeah, hope you guys had fun. I'll try to upload some stuff in the future. Maybe it'll be ladder games or Fortnite or something along those lines. And yeah, thanks for listening.